Myles Garrett is the best defensive player in the NFL. He's at his peak, playing his best football. Some people called my idea crazy. They said, this team has too many holes to fill. But that's not true. Yes, we have important gaps, but too many to compete? No way. Look at other teams. Even the best ones like the Eagles and Lions aren't perfect. Before we get to the latest news, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Now, let's get back to it. We have 4 key positions to fix: running back, quarterback, wide receiver, and edge rusher. Those are our biggest needs. Of course, after winning only 4 games last season, we want as many draft picks as possible to fill those gaps. But let's be honest, last year we had about 7 or 8 picks, and we got only 3 good starters out of them. And that's just how the draft works. You can't expect every pick to turn into a star. Now, if we trade a few picks for Myles Garrett, we're guaranteeing that one of those positions is covered, with the best player available. Yet, people still ask, why would he want to come here? Well, let's look at the odds. The betting odds for his next team include top contenders: the Cowboys, Commanders, Chiefs, 49ers, Eagles, Bills, and guess what? The Raiders have the same odds as the Eagles and 49ers. That means we are in the mix whether you believe it or not. Some people say, we have too many holes to go after someone like Myles Garrett. But let's look at the facts. Vegas and the odds makers clearly believe that we are not acting like a rebuilding team. They expect us to make moves to win right now. In fact, we're in the top 7 odds for Deebo Samuel. We were number 6 for Cooper Kupp, and we're in the top 3 for most quarterbacks expected to be available. That tells you something. We are not playing it safe. We are not sitting back and waiting. We are looking to build a competitive team immediately. Now, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm not giving our roster problems enough attention. We do have important holes to fill. No one is saying this is a Super Bowl-ready team. But let's be real. We don't have 9 huge gaps. We don't need a full rebuild. What we need are 4 key positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and edge rusher. That's it. Last year, we won 4 games. With Aiden O'Connell, we probably could have won 6, and remember, we were missing our number 1 wide receiver, had no running game, and got almost nothing from our quarterbacks. Even with those problems, the team under Antonio Pierce looked competitive. Now, imagine if we made no moves, kept the same team, same coaching staff, no draft picks, no free agents. Would we win just 4 games again? No. With this coaching staff alone, this team would probably win 7 games. But that's not the plan. We have $100 million in free agency money and 9 draft picks. That's a huge opportunity. We could use those draft picks to fill some holes, or we could trade a few to get a superstar. I wouldn't necessarily trade for Deebo or Cooper Kupp unless it's for a late-round pick. But for a player like Myles Garrett, absolutely. With a few smart moves, the 7-win team suddenly becomes a playoff contender. And that's exactly what Pete Carroll and John Spytek have said they want. This is not a rebuild. So saying, we have too many holes to trade for the best defensive player in the league, just doesn't make sense. That's one of the holes we need to fill. Now, some will still ask, why would Myles Garrett come here? Well, that's not my job to answer. That's up to the front office, Brady, Spytek, and Carroll. But look at the odds. Vegas believes we have a real chance. We're tied for 5th among possible teams. That means we're right in the mix, whether people want to admit it or not. At the end of the day, our front office and coaching staff have a history of finding the right players to fill key positions. And if we land someone like Myles Garrett, this team goes from hopeful to dangerous. Finding good players in the NFL doesn't always mean using first-round picks. Look at what John Spytek has done. He was in the front office when they found Rachaad White and Bucky Irving, both solid running backs, in the 4th round. If either of them were on our team today, they would easily be the Week 1 starter and could rush for over 1,000 yards. And what about wide receivers? Pete Carroll knows how to find talent. He came from Seattle, where they drafted DK Metcalf in the 2nd round, Tyler Lockett in the 3rd round, and Doug Baldwin as an undrafted player. These 3 became some of the best receivers in Seahawks history, and none were first-round picks. Now, let's talk about edge rushers. We have Malcolm C., a player we can re-sign. We could trade for Myles Garrett or find another way to strengthen that position. But here's the key. Pete Carroll built the legendary Legion of Boom defense in Seattle. He knows how to develop talent and fill gaps in the defense. The reason the Raiders are operating this way is simple. History. This front office and coaching staff have consistently found the right players for key positions. They have done it before, and they have the draft picks and free agency money to do it again. Let's not forget, Pete Carroll's first year in Seattle, the team went 7-9 but still won the division and even won a playoff game. That year, the Seahawks made more transactions in one offseason than any team in NFL history: trades, signings, cuts, and hirings. They rebuilt fast. And who did they beat in that playoff game? Drew Brees and the Saints. Carroll also found a 5'11" quarterback in the third round, a guy named Russell Wilson. He became the best quarterback in Seahawks history. And when Wilson's time was up, Carroll traded him for a bust named Geno Smith, who then led the team to the playoffs and became a multiple-time Pro Bowler. So when people say the Raiders have too many holes to fill, that's just not true. It's either a lie or they don't understand our roster. Last season, we won 4 games with bad coaching. If we had this coaching staff, we probably would have won 6 or 7 games. If Aiden O'Connell had started all year, we likely win 6 or 7. So why is it impossible to believe we can turn things around quickly? I don't think it's overly optimistic to say that the Raiders will be in the playoff mix next year. That's just the reality. How could we possibly only win 4 games again? First, our quarterback will be much better. That's guaranteed. No matter who we bring in, Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, Matt Stafford, Geno Smith, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, or even a rookie like Shedeur Sanders or J.J. McCarthy, our QB situation will improve. Now, imagine this. We trade for Myles Garrett. We sign a top receiver like Chris Godwin. We draft a strong running back like Quinshon Judkins in the 2nd or 3rd round. That's easily an 8 or 9-win team. And guess what? Myles Garrett would still be under contract. Pairing him with Max Crosby and extending his deal for another 2 to 3 years would make our defense a serious threat. Now think bigger. In one season, with Pete Carroll leading the way, we go from 4 wins to 8 or 9. That's the same kind of jump the Detroit Lions made. So why wouldn't Myles Garrett buy into the vision? This year, we'd be competitive. But in year 2 or 3, we could take over the division. Travis Kelce is getting older, and if the Chiefs start slowing down, the AFC West could be up for grabs. Now, I'm not the one who has to convince Myles Garrett to come here. That's Pete Carroll and the front office's job. But the situation makes sense. Some people act like the Raiders have way too many holes to fill. That's just not true. Yes, we have important holes, but not a long list of them. Look at the Washington Commanders. People said they were a mess, but what did they really need? A quarterback, maybe one more offensive weapon, and a coaching change. Their core was already solid. Now, finding an elite quarterback isn't easy, but we don't need perfection. If we find a guy who plays at 80% of an elite level, we'll be in a great spot. Even if we sign someone like Sam Darnold and he plays at 75% of his full potential, throwing 28 touchdowns instead of 35, that's still better than what we've had. So, are we Super Bowl ready right now? But are we far away from competing? Not at all. The Raiders are not as far from competing as some people think. Let's get the facts straight. This team won 4 games last season with Aiden O'Connell, barely any offensive weapons, and a bad coaching staff. Some people act like we should have gone winless, but that's just not true. Look at what we actually have. Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers as strong weapons. 3 solid offensive linemen, a great defensive line. We just need another edge rusher alongside Max Crosby. If we resign the right players and hit on a couple of draft picks, this roster will surprise a lot of people. Now, let's talk about the coaching staff. I'll say it again. If this coaching staff had been in place last season, we would have won at least 7 games. Even with Luke Getsy and Antonio Pierce figuring things out on the fly, we still won 4 games. Now, with better leadership, smart free agency moves, and key draft picks, how's it crazy to say we could win 8 or more? Some people are saying, no way we land a top player like Myles Garrett. But guess what? Vegas oddsmakers have us in the top 5 for landing him. That's not my opinion. That's just the reality. If Garrett wants to go somewhere else, fine. That's his decision. But saying it's stupid for the Raiders to even try is just wrong. At the end of the day, this team isn't far from competing. A few key moves, the right coaching, and a better quarterback. That's all it takes to make a big leap.